I would say that again, I was kind of acutely aware again of who I was or who I am
Mm.
um, when I embarked on, kind of my professional endeavors. But I also knew that in order to operate within the systems, right, within the construct of society, economic systems, that I had to ascribe values and beliefs to whatever those systems were.
Yeah.
It's just part of the deal, right? If you're going to operate in a capitalist framework, then in order to succeed, you must abide by and adhere to the respective ideology, which is kind of maybe not known to people, but the idea of like the end justifies the means, the
Yeah.
um, the idea that the kind of like shareholder maximization ideology, where the bottom line, all that matters is that the shareholder is maximized, right? Like
Yeah.
literally, that's the company's moral obligation, right? So
Yeah.
if it means that you have to, maybe it's legal, but you have to destroy an entire um, ecosystem by taking down rainforests in Brazil, that's part of the deal. Like that's just what it is. So what people don't realize is that that ideology bleeds into the individual who is performing or living under that construct. Just the
Mhm.
way it is, right? You may not recognize it. You may not be self-aware, but it's what you're doing, right? You're going, and it goes beyond morals, right? It goes into like your daily life where you are waking up at an early hour. You're spending your entire daylight hours at work for 5 out of the 7 days of your week, and then you're relegating 2 days to the weekend, which effectively allow you to like squeeze everything in and recharge, right?
Yeah.
So you are, and you might have to do it because that's what the system requires. That's what to survive or to thrive past whatever benchmark you're using. But that right there, not I'm not no judgment, but that right there tells you, right, where you are valuing your time and how you value your existence. Quite frankly, you
Yeah.
must accumulate money, and you must live your life according to kind of the mental framework of just constant accumulation, which is the same mental framework as what major corporations do. It's just it's constant, endless growth, right? Probably about 2 years ago, I kind of maybe had a far deeper introspection into my identity and the kind of performative identity that I was or character that I was playing, right,
Mm.
in my everyday life, because everybody plays a character whether they want to recognize it or not, right?
Oh yeah.
It's unconsciously or consciously, right? Like,
Yeah.
and what happens is when you grow up and you live in this framework, in this ideology, right? Again, whether you're conscious of it or not, um, you must contort yourself.
Mhm.
And in doing so, what happens is, and this obviously gets more intense as you're actually performing in the economy, but it also happens on a kind of a less grander scale, even with education and indoctrination, where your identity is you're learning as a child that there's this kind of like pass fail or A through F grading
Oh
system,
yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
regimented. You're taught to memorize beliefs, not question them, right?
True.
So your identity is based on performance.
Yeah.
You pass or you fail. This doesn't get lost, right? So as you go through the system, and then again, your survival is now based on performance, right? So you
Mhm.
take this performative, almost like mechanized identity, and then you live your life based on that because you have to. You're driven by your ego. You're not allowed to, the spiritual or the sacred or divine it has to be pushed aside. And although you may be a believer in the back of your mind, it's what has to happen in order for you to, really do what you have to do to, again, survive and live in this paradigm. I started doing real introspection, uh, again, probably about 2 years ago, where I was able to dig much deeper into understanding not just myself, but how a lot of this stuff can impact and has an impact on, any individual, no matter their social status, no matter their, financial situation. It impacts everybody, and it goes unnoticed, and it's unknown, and it accounts for me, it accounted for a lot of what I would call, trauma and disconnection, and that, I believe, is the same experience that people are experiencing just by virtue of being thrown out of whack with our natural ebb and flow that we all have inside of us. This is not, again, mystical. This is all part of our biology, our our neurobiology. I mean, it's all kind of there. So I hope that answers it. I know that wasn't an efficient response, but I hope that gives you an idea of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. As you were saying, to your point, a lot of our identity, and I think it takes a long time for a lot of us to recognize that a lot of our identity is tied up into things that has nothing to do with us, really, right? There is It's based on achievement. As you said, there is always a performance, right? You show up, you perform, you pass, you fail, you rise, you fall, all of these things. So, coming from that perspective, what does it look like now when you begin to turn the tide on that? Because how have you been able to, upon recognizing this, or I guess having been a seeker for such a long time, I'm assuming you've had some level of recognizing, like you've recognized this for some time, but you had to perform regardless, as you said. So I'd love to know now, like, how did you begin to kind of turn the tide on that? How can anyone even begin to undo that? Because as you said, the society that we live in requires us to be a certain way, requires us to put some aspects of ourselves to the side, as you did when you were performing in your role. When you said, if the shareholders requires cutting down trees and destroying forests, then that's required, but that also affects the person, whether they realize it or not, on a very deep level, right? Because you look at the forest as something that is completely separate from you, that has nothing to do with you, and this is a forest over there in another country. It's not affecting your everyday life, but it does affect you internally, whether you recognize that or not. So I'd love for you to speak to that.
Yeah, sure. So, I think the Amazonian rainforest destruction, I think that speaks a lot to, again, kind of like what a corporation is required to do, right? Now, like a human being, for example, is required to, let's say they're running a business, and they have investors, and they need their profit margin to increase in order to keep up with the expected amount of money they're supposed to make, right? So a business is constantly trying to grow. It's infinite growth. Well, what do you have to do as a person to accommodate that infinite growth, or even just maintain that growth? Like what margin are you making on your products? Are you a company that is exploiting cheap labor in Bangladesh to make t-shirts, right? Like that impacts the individual. When your hands or when your actual self touches that, right? Exploitation, taking advantage of people, right? It happens with the everyday worker. What if somebody, let's say somebody's buying from wholesale, they're buying something for $2, and everybody else is getting it for $3, but they're still looking to make 200% on their markup. I mean, it's little stuff like that, right? That impacts the individual. They don't realize it, but it becomes part of their compass, their moral compass. It's in many ways their moral compass is overridden by this new compass, right? Which they're required to do. And I think that it impacts them spiritually without them knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
And the identity question is a kind of very, very broad question. And I'll start kind of answering it by saying that, we really operate under a lot of illusions. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A major illusion that I talk about, I have an upcoming book, probably will be getting published in the next couple of months now. I'm very excited about, but I talk about the illusion of separation, which exists globally, right? Where we believe that we are separate from everything around us, right? Where we don't believe we're connected to nature, we're not connected to other people, we're not connected to ecosystems. This is a complete illusion.
Yeah.
Why do I say that? Well, we all exist because of these ecosystems. We breathe in
Exactly.
air from vegetation. We expel carbon dioxide that they breathe. Um, we have, the microbes in our body come from the outside world. We are all part of the same nature. We are not living in nature. With human beings, we have mirror neurons that are, we are in many ways like structured and programmed to receive and, operate relationally. We see somebody cry. We cry. We wince when somebody's getting hurt. Right? So we are deeply connected with other people. Now,
Yeah.
when you are raised in the paradigm, in the scientific materialist paradigm that we've all been raised in, everybody knows about guys like Rene Descartes or Isaac Newton. All
Yeah.
of these guys pushed this scientific materialism, and I learned it in school as well, in grade school, and in high school, right? Where everything is material,
Yeah.
and like the spirit or consciousness is just kind of like a weird, quirky byproduct, right?
Yeah.
But in truth, what you're learning is that we are physical objects living in this jungle, in the survival of the fittest jungle. Which, by the way, survival of the fittest lie is another great story. But in no way are species ascending or surviving by cutting themselves off and destroying other species. It's well
Yeah.
documented that it is the symbiotic ecosystem and the dependency upon other species that propel species upward in an evolutionary capacity. So
Yeah.
that aside, right? So when you believe that through your whole life, when you're told that you have to perform to excel in society, that you have industry being set up to exploit workers and to maximize profitability for corporations, when you have been indoctrinated to believe that you are just this material object by way of your formal educational schooling, when your religions are demanding that you access the spirituality and God through an external third party, that you don't have the ability to access it within yourself. Well, what is it telling you, right? What identity are you garnering from that? Now, most people don't think about it to the in-depth level that I do. People might think that I'm, being, just over curious and this is all irrelevant. But in truth, to think that it's not impacting you, in my mind, is, and I think many like-minded thinkers, is to be completely unconscious. I mean, to think
Yeah.
that you have just miraculously established this way to live life that coincides with everybody else because it's just inherent to your being. This is
Mm-hmm.
the biggest like level of confusion, because we aren't, and this is not how it works, right? We are learning. We are impacted by all of these many things, all of our many experiences, right? And this really transcends many planes, as do all of these discussions. But quite simply, where you're identifying again with your worth and your material possessions and your success and your title and your all these things. These again are not who you are. Even further, your thoughts and your emotions are not who you are. You're experiencing them, but
Yeah.
to define yourself in this sort of like rigid capacity that like your thoughts are who you are. Well, what if one day you're really mad at somebody and then the next day you're really happy with them? These are fluid experiences, right? We experience them, but they are not us. So the question is, who are we, right? If we aren't these things. And in kind of my, really drilling down endeavor, it's really hard to not think of your identity or your existence as kind of like, I call it like you're a wave in the ocean,
Mm.
right? You are, because we're all connected, right? So we are kind of like this unique being experiencing itself in this form, in like Aaron and Kertia's unique form, right? But again, to say that we are this wave without an ocean is completely illogical. I mean, it makes no sense. How do you define a wave if you're not incorporating the ocean in your definition of it? It's just,
Yeah.
and this is how, but this is how we construct our lives. This is how we live our lives. We live our lives as if we are this singular wave, not attached to source, not attached to anything divine or sacred. And guess what? When you live your life in that schism, when you adopt these ideologies, it impacts you on a very deep mental, spiritual level. And this is really kind of like a big part of what I'm looking to reveal to people. And
Yeah.
in doing so, I believe that people, if they're empowered with this kind of information and they're able to kind of like get more curious and dig a little deeper, then these people too will realize that they are not, forced to identify with these vapid things that will never make you happy. Forget about even identity. They won't make you
Yeah.
happy. They're not who you are. So that's kind of my effort. And I saw a big void kind of in that practice with kind of like spirituality, in that a lot of people were looking to kind of like transcend a plane and access or
True.
think of spirituality in like a different realm. But in truth, spirituality exists in our everyday lives. We've just been
Hmm.
taught that it doesn't by
Yeah.
our own religions, whether we want to look at it that way or not. We can't make the connection. But we don't have to go to church to access the divine. We don't have to go to an institution. It's just not
Yeah.
reality. So, and I don't mean to be like rude or like to be, I'm not trying to be like disrespectful, but to live your life identifying who you are the way that you are in this performative, object-based, disconnected from spirit or divine identity is to be delusional. You are
Hmm.
living a fragmented, delusional life, and it creates a deluded reality for you, right? So all of these people, which is really remarkable when you think about it, because all of these people who are spiritual and are trying to incorporate spirituality into their lives, like they're looked upon as being like strange. Why?
Yeah.
Because society has been indoctrinated to look at life the complete opposite way. And it's by virtue of our social systems and how we internalize the requirements both consciously and unconsciously.
Hmm.
This is just the fact. So again, I found a disconnect between the practical and the spiritual. So I really feel like if we can make that connection if I can make that connection for people, it will have a positive impact in awakening and in realization. I just gobbled up so much time. I'm sorry. But